when we think about what it takes to journey together with people, we think about how are we proactive in that? How do we combat the 5 S's of suicidal thinking, which we'll talk about, and how do we care for each other in the one-on-one? And so we're going to talk about each one of those. The first one is around journeying together. How do we be proactive? And so as we think about what does a suicide-safe community look like, and how do we create cultures and contexts that make it safe for people to talk, one of the things that we wonder about is what are the conversation starters? How do we as communities provide conversation starters so that people who are thinking about suicide don't have to be the ones to come and stand in front of us and do this? I started the day with that story about the woman who came up behind Jesus. And the question is, how do we sort of make it easy for these people who are coming up behind us to have these conversations? So one of them, as an example, would be my coffee mug. My coffee mug says, I lived to see a second day. Now, I could, if I wanted to, in a community where I was intentional about this, I could carry my coffee mug around. And it's a way of starting a conversation. It's a way of giving people someone, this gets people to ask me, what does it mean that you've lived into a second day? And I get a chance to talk about what that means. You can see here on my mug, this is supposed to be a bird with wings. We're redoing these, by the way. And we had sold them for a while at soul shops, and they kept breaking in my suitcase. So we don't do that anymore. But thinking about what does it look like to do that, and what could our community do that would be a good conversation starter. You can see that the bird's body is a semicolon. Any semicolons in the room? Anybody have a tattoo of a semicolon? Okay. There's such a thing right now called the Semicolon Project. The Semicolon Project was started by a person who was a second-day person. This person had been suicidal in the past, and she picked the semicolon as her symbol because she said a period ends a sentence. And I could have ended my story. I could have put a period on my story. A semicolon is a pause. But then the story continues. And so the semicolon is a symbol that I could have put an end to my story, but I didn't, and my story goes on. People who are second-day people, you'll often see, have semicolon tattoos. They get them on the inside of their wrist. Sometimes you'll see them behind people's ears. And I'll tell you the impact it has on me. I just did this in Portland last spring. And I walked into a room, and there was the woman who was kind of providing the space. And across the room, I saw the semicolon tattoo behind her ear. And I immediately knew some things about her. I knew that she was my ally and my advocate. I knew that she understood suicide on a whole different level than just somebody who had studied it. I know that she had lived experience. And that gave me a point of connection with her without ever having to exchange a word. Those are conversation starters. So I wonder, what if in a community or a faith community, you trained all your people in suicide prevention, and then once you were trained in suicide prevention, on your name tag that sometimes you have in faith communities, at the bottom of your name tag, it could say, I'm suicide safe. Ask me what that means. Or, I don't know. I worked with one faith community that had t-shirts made that had a butterfly on them, and it was a way of communicating that. We know, right, that, what's a pink ribbon mean?
Breast cancer.
Breast cancer, right? We all know that. So what are the ways that what are the images and symbols that you use in your community to make it easy for people to have these conversations? We don't have great ideas, and I would love to hear what yours are, because we need more of these.